The untold truth of America's most infamous prison breaks is not a story about genius criminals or Hollywood masterminds. It is a story about cracks in the system, cracks so deep and so wide that some of America's most dangerous inmates were able to walk, crawl, cut, or manipulate their way to freedom. For decades, movies have shown prison breaks as brilliant puzzles solved by antiheroes, but the truth hidden behind steel doors and razor wire is far more disturbing. Many of the most shocking escapes in American history were not the result of brilliance. They were the result of catastrophic failure. Guards asleep, cameras unplugged, gates left open, corrupt staff paid off, policies ignored, and systems that were supposed to be escape-proof collapsing under their own weight. This documentary reveals the real mechanics behind the most infamous prison breaks America doesn't want to talk about. The ones that exposed how fragile the entire prison system really is. Let's begin in 2015 at Clinton Correctional Facility in New York, a prison so old its walls were built before electricity. Richard Matt and David Sweat, two convicted killers, were housed in the prison's honor block, a place where inmates with good behavior earned small privileges. But what the public never knew was that this block also gave them access to blind spots, weak points, and staff members who had grown far too comfortable. The investigation would later reveal a chilling truth. The men didn't escape because they were geniuses. They escaped because guards stopped doing their jobs. Night rounds meant to be done every 30 minutes were skipped for hours. Bed checks were signed without being performed. And security alarms that could have alerted officers earlier had been intentionally disabled years before because they made too much noise. But the most shocking part wasn't the tunnel cutting or the pipe crawling. It was the involvement of a prison employee, Joyce Mitchell, who smuggled in hacksaw blades, drill bits, and tools hidden in frozen hamburger meat. She later admitted she planned to have the inmates kill her husband. The world saw a daring escape. The truth was far uglier, a system asleep at the wheel. But this wasn't unique. Across the country, America has a long history of escapes caused not by brilliant strategy, but by human failure. In 1984, at the Mecklenburg Correctional Center in Virginia, 6 death row inmates, including the notorious Briley Brothers, escaped by impersonating guards. They wore stolen uniforms, pushed a fake bomb made of TV parts, and drove out to the main gate in a prison van. How? Multiple malfunctioning security doors, fatigued staff, supervisors who ignored warnings, and an outdated system that had fewer than half the officers needed for night duty. The public saw a bold breakout. Investigators saw a disaster years in the making. And then there's the story of Pascal Payet in 2001, a French-Algerian prisoner held in a maximum security U.S. facility on international transfer terms, who escaped by helicopter. A literal helicopter descended into the prison yard, picked him up, and flew away. Guards reacted too slowly because they believed it was maintenance personnel. The escape took 90 seconds, but the truth is security protocols had been outdated for years, and the prison had stopped doing aerial threat drills because of budget cuts. Or consider the 1979 escape of James Earl Ray, the man convicted of assassinating Martin Luther King Jr. He fled from Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary after bribing guards, slipping through a weak security fence, and running into the woods. He was captured 54 hours later, but the investigation exposed widespread corruption among staff. Even the cold case prison breaks of the 70s and 80s follow the same pattern. Undertrained guards, inconsistent supervision, faulty locks, and outdated infrastructure providing opportunities that inmates seized. The deeper you look, the more obvious it becomes. These escapes were not outliers. They were symptoms. Symptoms of a prison system often stretched too thin, too underfunded, too mismanaged, and too unaware of its own vulnerabilities. The untold truth of America's most infamous prison breaks doesn't just reconstruct daring getaways. It exposes the hidden ecosystem behind them. Every escape begins long before the breakout. It begins with a blind spot, a distracted guard, a broken camera, a door that no longer locks, a staff member struggling financially, an inmate placed in a unit that gave him too much access, or a warden who ignored warning signs for years. In interview after interview, corrections officers repeat the same haunting line. Prisons don't fail all at once. They fail slowly. Then suddenly, investigators often find the same chain of events. A guard misses one round. A supervisor ignores one report. A camera fails and no one repairs it. A tool goes missing and no one files paperwork. An inmate builds trust, gains privileges, and watches every routine until he sees exactly where to strike. And once the opportunity appears, the escape takes minutes, even seconds. In some cases, inmates spent months digging, cutting, bribing, or planning. But the real reason they succeeded wasn't the planning itself. It was the lack of anyone stopping them. A prison break is not the story of one brilliant inmate. It is the story of dozens of people who didn't notice what was happening, or who noticed but didn't act. In every documented major escape, corruption played a role, whether directly or indirectly. Officers smuggled tools. Staff members ignored rules. Supervisors turned a blind eye. And inmates exploited every weakness. One veteran corrections officer summarized it like this: "You want to know how escapes really happen? People get lazy. People get tired. People get comfortable. That's it. But escapes don't end at the gate. What follows is chaos. Statewide lockdowns, FBI mobilization, helicopters sweeping through forests, K-9 units tracking footprints, troopers patrolling back roads, and towns glued to the news, afraid of who might knock on their door." In the Clinton escape, over 1,300 officers were deployed. Millions of dollars spent. Entire counties shut down. And yet, such massive manhunts often reveal even deeper failures. Miscommunication between agencies, incorrect tips, flawed tracking methods, locals interfering, and terrain far more difficult than most departments are trained for. But the truth is even darker. Not every inmate escapes to run. Some escape because they want revenge. In several cases, including the 1998 escape of Martin Gurley in Texas, investigators discovered plans to target former witnesses, rival gang members, or even guards who worked inside the prison. These escapes aren't just about freedom. Sometimes they're about unfinished business. Sometimes they're about retaliation. And sometimes they're about disappearing forever. Cold case escapes from the 70s, 80s, and 90s include inmates who vanished without a trace. No recovery, no leads, no closure. The system simply lost them. These stories expose a reality far removed from Hollywood. The most infamous prison breaks weren't epic battles of wits. They were indictments of failure. Failure of staffing. Failure of oversight. Failure of training. Failure of infrastructure. Failure of accountability. And failure of a prison system stretched past its breaking point. As one federal investigator put it, every escape makes one thing clear: the most dangerous prisoner isn't the one behind bars. It's the one the system underestimates. The untold truth of America's most infamous prison breaks forces us to confront a question the government rarely answers. If this many escapes happened before, how many more are possible now? Many prisons were built 40, 60, even 100 years ago. Their budgets are shrinking. Their staff is exhausted. Their technology is outdated. Their corruption cases are rising. And inmates, some of the most intelligent, patient, and desperate individuals alive, are studying every flaw. This documentary reveals something the public has never truly grasped. Inmates don't need brilliance to escape. They only need a moment. One moment when the system fails. One moment when someone looks away. One moment when a crack widens into a tunnel. The question isn't whether America's next infamous prison break will happen. The question is, has it already begun?